Hello, everyone. Welcome here to another live with Scientology Life After a Cult. I'm Natalie Webster. If we haven't met before, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. And if you've been here before for a live or on my live the other day with Erin over at Growing Up Scientology, thank you for coming back. I appreciate all of you so much. And I'm excited to share with you today my sister, Lana.
Hi.
Now, some of you have, especially if you follow my podcast, Tonka Talk, Community and Connection, which is a podcast about the ways people create community and connection. But on Fridays, I share my personal story growing up in Scientology and leaving. And Lana has joined me for that in the podcast for what, 2 times maybe?
Mm-hmm.
2 times. So this would be the 3rd time. This is her first time doing a live. This is her first time sharing her story. I mean, you've never talked about it. Not publicly. And honestly, a lot of it, and it's funny because going through this and doing the podcast and doing lives here now on this YouTube channel, there's a lot of conversations that we're even having as a family that we never really had, I would say. And not because I don't think there was ever a conscious decision of like, oh, we're not talking about this. We just been busy.
Yeah, there's been no time.
Yeah, it's just one, we've been raising kids. We're both grandmas. I have 2 grandchildren and Lana has one beautiful little grandbaby named Sunny. We'll have to, well, not now, but eventually we're going to show you pictures of the grandkids because they are super, super cute and adorable. Thank you so much for all the love. I'm explaining to Lana too how this works with a live, how you're watching, and then later on the replay, people can watch. Let's see, we know we can hear you well. And these are the comments that come up, but you don't have to worry about those because if there's a question, I'll bring it up too. And then I'll ask the question. And if it's a question for you, you can go ahead and answer it.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to kind of do a quick recap of Lana's story, and you jump in at any time and comment on it.
Sure.
Lana, I would say as you get to know us, you'll realize that Lana's the more quiet one, but we're going to bring her out of her shell because she has a lot to say and a lot to share. So Lana, of course, is my sister, and like me, was born and raised in Hawaii. But when Lana was 14, she joined the Sea organization. She ended up going up to international management and eventually back down to Los Angeles, where I was, working at my Dunder Mifflin Sea organization job. She ended up coming there. So Lana was, how long were you in the Sea org?
5 years.
5 years, that's right. She also got married in the Sea org, right? And how old were you?
I was just turned 18.
Just turned. So were you 18 when you got married?
Yes.
Okay. And I love this. Nancy says, I'm here for it. Nothing but love.
No.
CWC. Hello, friends. Hello again. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jilly, the sassy sister. Some of the screen names are so awesome. And I heard this, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't remember the name, but I did screenshot it because I did want to mention it. Someone put in a comment, it was, not today, Satan. What's so funny about that too is because often in our family, or at least I do, I'm always saying, not today, Satan. Not today, Satan.
That's hilarious.
I almost died. I love it, but I love the names. Nancy, thank you so much. See, she says, hello, beautiful ladies. See if I click on here, it comes here. Hello, loving your content. Saw you on Erin's channel. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me here. And hopefully you'll subscribe and follow the channel. I'm always thinking too, like it'd be great. It'd be great to get a whole bunch of people up front, so I don't have to repeat myself as much. You guys can fill everybody in on the story as they get here in the chat and whatnot. Jilly, we're grandmas because we started early. Remember, in the Sea organization, you don't date, you marry.
That's right.
And I was married at 17, Lana at 18, and I had my first daughter when I was 19, which I shared quite a bit about that I shared with them the coerced abortion story and all that.
Mm-hmm.
When you became pregnant, you were in the C organization. So
Yep.
did they go at you?
Yep. My senior suggested that I get an abortion.
Yeah, suggested.
Yeah. And when I told him that no way I couldn't get an abortion, my mom would kill me.
And remember, she was married. This wasn't like or that even that you.
Yeah,
you
it
know.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't out of wedlock, but yeah, so that's what I said, and I was absolutely not going to do it. And he just said, well, a lot of people do it, and if you don't, you're gonna have to leave your post, blah 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 blah. And
Yeah, they really normalized, and again, we're not here to. There's no judgment. I mean, honestly, I'm pro-choice. I think it should be your choice what you do with your body. It's the issue is the just the coercion about it.
Yeah. So they make you feel guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of close to my senior, who was a little bit of a father figure, and he got pissed and he just stopped talking to me. And I was already 6 months pregnant. And
before you told?
Because I didn't know I was pregnant.
See, this is why I love doing this with my family, because a lot of what you're hearing for the first time, I'm hearing for the first time.
Yeah, so I mean,
you didn't know you were pregnant.
No, I was a virgin when we got married, and I knew nothing about, I knew how babies were made, but I didn't know anything else. I didn't know a lot of anatomy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I could get pregnant so quick. We didn't use contraceptive.
Do you remember anyone ever telling you about contraception?
No.
Yeah. I've shared with the people here that we were pretty much feral.
We were feral. Yeah, for sure.
And Lana ended up having her baby, and she has a beautiful daughter today who also has a daughter, and who her daughter, I tell them how I'm really proud of the fact that my grandkids are never ends, like never ends Scientology. Yeah. A lot of the people who never been in refer to themselves that way, and I love it. I love it. I feel like the never ends are just all these just fairies and angels all over the place.
So lucky.
Jilly, Natalie, when you want superpowers, you can say BTs activate. And if you don't know, if you know, you know. But in Scientology, in the upper levels, we learn about what L. Ron Hubbard called body thetans, which are what BTs are. A thetan in Scientology, that's who you are, the spiritual being, the soul. And when you get onto the upper levels, you learn about how L. Ron Hubbard says there was a galactic overlord named Xenu, and he took all these people from other planets, threw them in volcanoes, blew them up with hydrogen bombs on Earth. And those spirits called body thetans attach themselves to humans. And that's why we do the crap we do. That's what the belief is, blame it on the body thetans. But your average everyday Scientologist won't know this. When did you first find out about body thetans and Xenu and aliens?
When I was about 22, 23, maybe. My boyfriend at the time was trying to get me out of Scientology, and he was all over the internet and everything, and so he brought that up to me, and he also got on had me have a phone call with Jesse Prince, who also shared that with me. And later in life, I think you also shared it with me.
Yeah, after I was already out. Lana left Scientology much earlier in life, but she did so very quietly. Because that's just how it goes. There's always this fear of disconnection. Is my family going to cut ties with me? So when one person, especially in a larger Scientology family, tends to leave, they tend to kind of like really keep it on the down low. Okay. Lisbon. Wow. That's the cool thing too, is people come from all over the place.
Oh, wow.
Like all over the world. CWC, does Sea Org ever encourage vasectomies? I think I heard that they did. I think it was, but I don't know when that was. That'd be a good question for somebody. I had my daughter in 1990. What came later? I don't know if it was because of the expense. I mean, because who's paying for the vasectomy too?
Right.
That's kind of the thing. I wonder.
Right. And there's recovery time, which they're not going to allow you to have.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to have that recovery time. So I'm not sure, but that's a really good question. If anyone knows, share in the comments if you've heard from anyone else who's been out of the SEA organization. Do they encourage vasectomies? I would imagine that they would. I just question, how would it get paid for?
Mm-hmm.
And so is that actually, an option? I did hear from a few people that they were pushing IUDs really hard on women. I know that was going on for a while too. If you're not familiar with the history in Scientology with the Sea organization and the coerced abortion history, you can give it a little Google on the Google machine, and it'll pop up all kinds of info and heartbreaking stories about that. And I've talked about it a few times because that happened to me as well. But I had my daughter, I had my Shelby, and some of you have met her here in the chat. Yeah, the sassy sister, yet this church suggests termination. And with couples who, I would say, I can't speak for I'm not speaking for every person who's ever gotten pregnant in the Sea organization. But in these times where they're coerced abortions because they don't want them. It wasn't going to be their choice. And it just became such a huge part of the culture. My hope is it's not happening that way, as much today. I would really, but I don't doubt that it is, because that kind of tends to be what happens in Scientology. Something comes out in the press and they kind of clean it up a little bit and pretend, no, nothing to see here. We're not doing that. And then they get right back to it.
Yep.
So Lana had been out of the Sea organization from your 20s. Oh, Shelby's here. Hey, Shelby.
Hi, Shelby. Let's see. When did I leave? So 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, because I got pregnant at 18 and had her at 19. So
did you have her in LA or in Minnesota?
Minnesota.
Okay, so you had already moved to Minnesota.
Yeah.
With your husband at the time. All right. SBTV fan. Rachel said that men wanting to get married sometimes get suggested vasectomies, but I don't remember details. That sounds about right. When it's bad PR, they make small changes. That's true. That's so true. And that's why I'm beating a horse, but the more that these stories get out and repeated and shared and across social media, the more it creates an issue for them, because so many people are talking about it or asking about it that it puts pressure on them. And sometimes it gets them to back off on some of these behaviors, at least for a little bit of time, which, you know what, even that would be worth it. Now, what we're chatting about today, and again, feel free to jump in the chat, go ahead and share your questions, and question for me, question for Lana, and we should be able to get to those. We're talking about ketamine therapy. Lana, and can you talk a little bit about just the history of what led up your dealing with PTSD and the help that you've kind of sought over the years?
Right. So I had suffered, I'm saying past tense because I'm planning on not to suffer from that anymore. But I suffered from anxiety, depression, and PTSD. I believe all because of our traumatic childhood. And
it's something you've dealt with throughout your adult life.
Yeah, my whole life. Recently, I would say in the last 2, maybe 3 years, it's starting getting really bad to where I don't want to leave the house.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has had to do with childhood trauma.
And then having so much anxiety around your surroundings and staying home and not wanting to leave, that made you feel safer.
Right.
Yeah. And that was interfering obviously with your day-to-day life.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And you'd been seeing, because you've been in therapy and you have a psychiatrist that you've been working with as well.
Yep. I've seen the same psychiatrist for 7 years. I have had multiple different kinds of therapy, including EMDR, which is, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's supposed to help with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on medications.
What was the EMDR like? Did you find that helpful in your case?
It was helpful for some smaller issues, but the ketamine handled the big issues.
Yeah. What would you say? And I've told Lana ahead of time, if there's anything she doesn't want to discuss, handle, or talk about, she can just like no comment, and we will completely move on from it. When you talk about the PTSD, and you're going through and you're getting therapy and you're working through it, what are some of the ways that it manifested where you realize that, hey, this is something more than I'm struggling with this thing? You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a difference between having a bad day and having clinical depression.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between, I have some mood swings because I'm a woman of a certain age in the menopause, or having maybe something like a bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that were happening where you felt like this whole thing is more than just like you actually could feel the effects of the PTSD?
Oh, since I was a kid, since Sea Org time, I mean, we're constantly getting shoved down and pushed around. And for me, unlike Natalie, I'm very quiet and I don't really argue with authority. And that wasn't, how it went for me.
Yeah.
Although just in your when you're developing your brain as a kid and as a teenager, things happen. Like, just to give a little background, I wanted to commit suicide in the Sea Org, and I tried to do it 4 times. And so you can imagine what kind of pressure I was under.
I'm sorry, I'm just hearing this for the first time. I'm going to need a moment.
Do you need a tissue?
I forgot tissue again. Where this is from?
It's just my
Okay. Oh, you thought about it, or you said you tried?
Well, let's see. I tried twice. I thought about it all the time, and it was an awful experience. So lonely, so depressed, so trapped. There was no, family members around. There's no one to love me. No one to give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Lana was 14 when she went into the Sea organization alone, with someone who was supposed to be her guardian. That person was never there. If you listen to the Tonka Talk podcast, you would have heard her share that part of it. So that then continued into adulthood until you left Scientology and was able to finally start getting some help.
Yep.
And you tried multiple different things over the years.
Yep.
And some of those helped and some of those didn't. Right. How did ketamine therapy come up?
Well, I was hearing, on the internet, on TV, on some other mainstream places about ketamine infusion.
Yeah, all I ever heard of ketamine was like when I would watch YouTube videos of people going to these parties or raves or what are they called? Festivals. I have never been. We miss all this stuff when we were growing up. I had never been like really to a concert. I think when I took my kids, I was an adult. We went and saw Jewel, and we went that other time when we took the kids to Panic at the Disco. I think it was.
Had I known Hollywood Bowl was so close to us while we were in the Sea Org, I would have blew all the time to go there.
And to blow is to leave, an unauthorized leave, to just like take off and go, which Lana did a few times.
Oh yeah, several.
Now, with your, and you talked it over with your psychiatrist to do ketamine therapy.
Right.
And like I was saying, I had only heard of ketamine in kind of this world of festivals and people just using it recreationally.
Right.
I didn't know a lot about it.
Yeah, the amount of ketamine that you receive in the infusions is majorly low compared to what they do recreationally.
Oh, okay. So it's not the same type of high.
Oh, I don't know, because they never did recreational
Ketamine?
Vitamin K, as they call it.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'd heard of that, but again, yeah, we're a little ignorant when it comes to the street drugs because we grew up in a cult. One question here, Lana, were you hesitant to see a therapist or take medication because of your upbringing?
Yes, very. And it was like the last resort. And I'm really glad I did it because, Scientology doesn't, L. Ron Hubbard took psychology and other religions and ideas about how to handle your mental illness from places that were already talking about it. And so it's not just, Scientology doesn't have a monopoly on, how to handle your past.
Yeah, exactly. And an interesting thing about that too is in Scientology, the solution is auditing or Scientology counseling. Yet there's no acknowledgement of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
There is no mental illness. It is just completely not acknowledged at all. Yeah. It's just your reactive mind, or I guess your body thetans acting up. Mm-hmm. And the solution is Scientology. So it's very common, unfortunately, for many people to go without getting proper treatment because you're also scared to death because you're terrified as a Scientologist to even speak to somebody who even works in the field because of all the things you're told. L. Ron Hubbard believes that psychiatrists are behind the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's who he blames for it. And with everything that was written about Scientology and when he wrote Dianetics and whatnot way back in the day, there's so much that's come out that we understand more now about mental illness and the brain. Mm-hmm. And you see medically, in the medical community, in the mental health community, they're updating, right? They're updating. They're like, oh, yes, we now know that this is the way that this is how the brain works, that we can rewire pathways. But nothing changes in Scientology.
Right.
Nothing. Same processes. You don't alter anything. The same points of view. They're homophobic because it's very clear in multiple books by L. Ron Hubbard. His views on homosexuality are super, super clear. Mm-hmm. And he just ain't he was not down with that. Mm-hmm. And even though today, I think the Church of Scientology tries to take a softer approach to it. It's still, when I was in the Sea organization and I worked at Pacific-based Crew, the estates organization, that's where people were busted into. So if you got in trouble, you got busted in the Sea organization, you got demoted down to that organization. And there were multiple people who came to work with me in the dining room who got in trouble for homosexuality. Mm. Or I remember one guy in particular, and it was really sad because he was suicidal. He had engaged in some type of act, and it got found out. And so he got in trouble and he was sent to the dining room to work with me. Welcome, Shelby Lafreniere. I'm sure your mom and aunt appreciate your support. Yes, we do. We're looking forward to meeting you and your siblings when you're ready. Yes, I'm going to get Shelby on for a live as soon as we can coordinate our schedules. Oh my goodness. Look who's there.
I can't see.
It's Nahe. It is our other sister, just tuned in from Hawaii. Nahe is our younger sister, and she was never in Scientology. We share the same dad, but different mom. Lana and I have the same parents, and our mom is the one who became a Scientologist. So you're talking to your therapist and your psychiatrist, and you're like, hey, I heard about this ketamine treatment. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, this is something that you can try.
Yeah, my psychiatrist said, he knew about it. He didn't really have an opinion either way. He didn't say no. So I told him, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And he's like, great, let me know what happens.
So what does this look like? Walk us through it. You get your psychiatrist signs off on this ketamine infusion therapy.
Yeah. And he doesn't have to sign off on anything. I just wanted his okay.
Yeah.
For my own personal.
Sure. So you show up at a medical facility. I'm assuming
Yep.
this is not done in a park.
No, it's a little clinic, and you go into a room, and they dim the lights for you. You're on a recliner. You're hooked up to an IV because that's how you're going to get your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And they monitor all your vitals on that little beepy machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get 40 minutes.
Once you get the infusion, what appealed to you, like when you were researching this and talking to your doctors about it? What's some of the things that ketamine infusion is supposed to help?
Well, anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it definitely, my experience has it. That's true.
Yeah. So you go in, you get to be in a recliner, and you had told me that people either can just be and have it be quiet or listen to music, or they can bring someone in to talk with.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody about why you made the decision to have someone in there with you to talk through some things.
Right. So it wasn't suggested that somebody come in with me and kind of help guide me, because I knew that I was going to be goofy, or under the influence, and I lose my train of thought a lot, and especially on ketamine. So it was helpful for me. I decided that I was going to talk out loud about whatever it was I wanted to discuss. And my husband came along the first time, and he just mostly listened and got me back on track, where I would be like, wait, what was I talking about? And
what did it feel like? You get the medicine, you get the infusion. You mentioned that it's nowhere near the dose that people get when they use ketamine recreationally.
Right. So about 3 to 5 minutes, you start feeling it, and you basically slowly, your body starts getting numb. And then you slowly, for me, you slowly go into this kind of in the couch feeling, like you're
had a bunch of
very,
indica.
very weighted. Yeah. And you're completely aware, but you are squinty-eyed, and your vision does get blurry.
Yeah.
And for me, I had to focus on one thing in the room and talk, because if you move your head side to side a lot or move your body around, you do get dizzy. They do give you anti-nausea, so that's super helpful.
I remember after the first time you did it, I asked, because again, we don't have a large experience with a multitude of recreational drugs. And I was curious, like, well, what was it like? What was the high like? And you had said, I can't believe anybody wants to do this recreationally.
Yeah, if they're getting way more than what you're getting in a clinical environment, I don't know why anybody would want to do that, because if you move around, you're not in control of your body. You're going to be falling all over the place. Yeah,
and you're laying down in a recliner.
Yeah.
So when you're talking, you're kind of just talking about what comes up, and for you, a lot of your time in the Sea Org is what came up.
Yep.
And can you describe what it was like looking back on it when you were, with the ketamine infusion? You had mentioned how you were able to see things more clearly.
Yep. You are able to go into whatever your trauma was and tell all the details about it. Some things I didn't remember, and I remembered. Some more detail.
If you're comfortable sharing, what are some of the things that became more clear to you that you remembered?
For example, my last session, which was session number 5, I was able to go back to just being a small kid in diapers.
Wow.
And I was looking into my self-worth.
Wow.
And I was able to, how do I explain? Kind of like in Scientology or Dianetics, where it talks about you finding the earliest similar.
Yeah.
I was doing that. And
just kind of naturally.
Yeah, just naturally. I'm talking through traumatic things. And so I'm like, oh no, there was another time. And then another time.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, I wanted to get to the original, the most earliest I could think of. And, when, so I was a little kid and our mom had gone away for, a little while. She had to go find herself and get off drugs and alcohol and
yeah, this is when our mom took off for what, about a year?
Yeah.
To find a better life, is what she told us. And while she was away, that's when she met our stepdad, Brian, who is the person who got our mom and then us into Scientology. I was about 5 then, 5 years old. So you would have been about 2 when she left.
So a lot of things were, one, it wasn't my fault. Because as a little kid, you can sometimes, think it's your fault because you don't understand what the adults are talking about.
Yeah.
And also that was a big one. And then also, you remember, I don't know if people remember Dick. You were talking about Dick, our
Grandpa Dad.
Yeah.
That's how I think pretty much everybody knows him now, as Grandpa Dad. Our mom was married 4 times, 3 times to Scientologists. Our stepdad, Brian, who got us into Scientology. His dad, who became Grandpa Dad, because he was our grandpa, and our mom married him, then he became our dad. But we continued to call him Grandpa. And then her last husband was our stepdad, Corey, who she was married to for 20 years. She was married to him until she passed away.
Right. So, Dick was unloving.
Yeah.
Not the huggy people, not the most nurturing.
Yeah.
More like militant, tyrant, dictator.
And you can see why in Scientology, especially multi-generational families, the grooming in terms of the mind control happens in the home. It's backed up, you agree, and perpetuated. So Dick, our Grandpa Dad, I refer to him as our own cult leader of our family, because he was the source for a lot of Scientology, because he had a beef with the Church of Scientology in Hawaii. And it's funny because I think I told you the other day, I just always thought that Lana got all the hugs because there wasn't a lot of affection in our family. And Lana was our mom's favorite, I always felt. And what was it you said? You were like, no.
Yeah. What? I don't know where you were, but no, I wasn't getting love and attention.
No.
Either.
Apparently Grandpa Dad was the only one getting that. But we digress. So you were saying, so you're able to kind of go back, and you just naturally go back and see these things, but you're able to see them more clearly. And the treatment, you can do it for, how many times can you do it?
You should, the recommended is 6 sessions.
Okay.
Initially.
Yeah. You've done 5?
5.
Okay. What are some of the changes that you have noticed while you've been doing it?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I couldn't really leave the house.
Yeah.
I get really bad anxiety, sweating, shaking, thinking of all the horrible things that are going to happen to me if I leave the house. And I don't have that anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm probably 98, 99% okay with leaving the house.
Which makes complete sense because we've recorded these episodes here. My setup here that I'm in is at my office, and then I just created one at home so I can do more lives when I'm home. And I'm probably, 40 minutes to your house?
Mm-hmm.
So Lana's been coming here, and just the fact that she's been coming here and she even came to my house and slept over a couple times, that is a huge difference. I've probably seen Lana more in the last several weeks since she's been doing the ketamine infusions than I have in forever, because you didn't want to leave the house. It was really hard for you to go places.
Yep.
So tell me more about that. You're doing the treatment, but then, because doesn't the ketamine, and I want to say we are no experts on this whatsoever, nor am I saying that everybody should be running out and doing ketamine infusion therapy. I just think it's really interesting, and the ways that people who've gone through trauma, or trauma, PTSD, anxiety and depression, what the solutions are that they find and how they work through it, what helps them overcome. And there's no one solution for everybody. So I always like to say, hey, figure out what you got to do for you, kind of a thing. But I think it's interesting to hear these stories of how those things help and make a difference.
Right. Yeah. If you want to get rid of, like my experience has been, if you want to get rid of deep trauma, like I don't know why I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't know what to do about it. I have had many therapies and nothing seemed to resolve the issue. And the ketamine just allowed me to go real deep, and you feel like you're in the incident.
Wow. So it's like you're back in that time when that happened. So you're looking at these things from childhood and your time in the Sea organization. I remember you were sharing with me, one of the things you recalled was walking around the international base with Rowan Hubbard, who's L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter, who, as far as we know, we heard she's no longer in, and wish her the best. And you want to give a shout out? I know you miss her.
Hi, it's me, Lana. I hope you get to watch these things.
It'd be fun to connect.
It would be super fun. It's like seeing your best friend from junior high school,
Yeah. What were some of the things that you were remembering when you were getting the infusion about that time at the international base?
The international base. A lot of it with the Sea Org was abandonment from time being abandoned by your parents so many times. And in the Sea Org, it was just super exacerbated because we had no one. And so,
and you had this friendship that developed, like she was the only friend that you had.
In INT. She was just a light, and so bubbly and laughy and
so different from anyone else there.
Totally. Everyone else was scared and looked down, and God forbid you laugh at a joke or something.
Completely. Someone says here, I think that says Tumaka, you got to forgive me, even though I'm wearing my old lady glasses right now, it's really hard. I need to get a giant screen. I need to find out how Aaron does this with more than one screen, but here we go. Jamie Mustard speaks about dual sympathetic reset in a book named Invisible Machine. People who do not get help from ketamine can get help from DSR. So DSR must be dual sympathetic reset. I just started watching that video with Jamie Mustard, and I downloaded his book on Audible. I'll have to tell you about it and share it with you. But it's absolutely fascinating. I think we talked a little bit about this, on how that you can reset your nervous system. I remember when I went to the University of Minnesota, and the neurologist told me that was an issue that I was having, and that's why I was having mobility issues. Was there was some faulty rewiring that happened with my brain due to the way that I grew up and the experiences that I had and the trauma. And interestingly, I don't know if I've ever really made this clear. and you might, I don't know if you noticed or not, I never talked about our past in the Sea Organ growing up as trauma.
Right.
It wasn't language that I used. And for me, part of shedding that cult culture is finding what those words are that really describe it. And I think there's something when you're in when you're in Scientology, and especially when you're raised from childhood to understand that you are not allowed to be a victim. That is the worst possible thing. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That you could be is a victim.
I have a quick story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our second dad, Brian, he was in a wheelchair, and because you already explained that.
Yeah, he had gotten into a car accident in his 20s due to a drunk driving accident. He was a passenger, and he became paraplegic. And he's the one our mom met. By the way, did mom meet him in the strip club or just while she was stripping?
Well, isn't that the same thing?
Well, no, like did he physically go in the strip club and meet her?
That was my understanding.
That's what I thought too. I just wasn't sure. And why that's kind of odd is because a Scientologist it would be hugely frowned upon. You would get in trouble for going to a strip club.
Totally. He was in his he was very depressed, and his dad, our grandpa dad, was very militant. So he once was Brian was feeling sorry for himself. He's like, look at me, I can't do anything, I'm paralyzed, blah blah blah. And Dick picked up his wheelchair, threw it out the front door, and said, get out of here. I don't want you in here because you're not working, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's very frowned upon.
Really classic example too of a senior Scientologist. So our grandpa dad was the person in the family who'd gotten the furthest in Scientology on the bridge to total freedom. He was an operating Thetan level 3. At that time, I think you could only go up to 7 at that time. So he was always looked up to as the source of all things, and his word was final. And so he threw the wheelchair out of the house.
Yep.
And kicked out his paraplegic son, who was paraplegic due to an accident, who was a young man when it happened. So what happened? Did Brian actually leave?
He left. And I don't remember where he went, how he survived. But he somehow did, very determined. He met mom.
Yeah.
He told her, get your kids, have them live with us, of course, and started to work on his wood carving.
Yeah, I remember he did share that he taught himself, his hands were like this. And he taught himself to draw, to sculpt, and he became a very well-known wood carver.
He was the premier wood carver in the state of Hawaii.
He was known as the wood carver. I've found some of his pieces on eBay. I think I showed you one that I found and I bought it. And we have a couple of his pieces. Absolutely beautiful. So Grandpa Dad kicks him out, throws out the wheelchair. He must have kind of gotten his life somewhat established to a degree before he met our mom, because he had a place to go.
Right. He may have gotten like disability or something.
Yeah.
Whatever the state stuff was back then.
Yeah. So, and I'm guessing too that maybe he wasn't as active in Scientology at the time. And so, right, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So he meets our mom, who at the time was working as an exotic dancer, and then got us back. There was a custody battle. We were kidnapped back and forth a couple times, and then we ended up living with her. So I forgot how we even got there.
Something about, you were saying something about in Scientology, it's like,
you
really
can't be a
bad.
victim. You're right. You cannot be a victim. And I mean, that's just classic behavior there. I forgot about that. I remember hearing about that. So as you're going through these different treatments, you're just is it kind of like you're just realizing that, hey, I feel like leaving the house. Like I'm okay with doing that.
Yeah, I kind of let it happen naturally. So if I had an errand to run, usually I'd run them like one day of the week.
Yeah.
And then so I didn't have to leave the house at all, you know, the rest of the week. But now I can think about doing those errands, you know, more often during the week. I don't have to do them all in one day.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you find it easier to look back on your time in the Sea Organization or growing up in Scientology? Is it easier to look back at those things?
Way easier to look back at the things that I covered, you know, in under ketamine.
And these are, and again, Lana's never talked about her experiences in Scientology and the Sea Organization until very recently, not publicly, and I mean, really not at all. It's just stuff that you just didn't really bring up. Pause for Andrea says, aloha at Nahilani Parsons. That's who's our sister. It'd be interesting to hear your experiences and viewpoints too, if you ever want to share them. I love that idea.
My viewpoints?
Nahe's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because she grew up, she was born in Hawaii, and then when she was little, her mom moved her to England, which is where her mom was from. Her mom lived there. So she was raised in England and was schooled there, went to college in Wales. So she looks like us, but has an English accent. And we were fortunate enough to, after she had moved, I think she was around 7, from the time she was around 12, we would fly her to Minnesota to visit us and spend time with us in the summertime. And then she grew up and eventually could buy her own tickets. Buy us lunch now.
Yeah.
Now she's gone to law school. She was living here for a while here in Minnesota and just recently actually moved back to the islands. We'll have to talk more about that and talk to her about it. That would be interesting because she was here during the times when I was still in Scientology when she was 12 and going through, she's really kind of seen us go through the whole thing and then even to leave and come out of Scientology. She's witnessed a lot of it. Pause for Andrea. That's a great idea. I would love, even if she wasn't comfortable sharing it here, I would want to know from her. We're going to have to ask her about that. I'm just going to see here if there are any questions in here. Here is a question from Dragonfly. Are these ketamine treatments done under psychiatrist care, or is it more specialized? You said you go to a different clinic.
Yeah, it's not my psychiatrist clinic. It's clinic is specifically for giving ketamine infusions. And what was I forgot what the question was.
Is it somewhere specialized that you go?
Oh yeah, they're the doctor in charge is an anesthesiologist, and he has nurses, you know, doing your intake form and putting in your IV and checking on you and everything.
How long are the sessions themselves?
40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then that doesn't include recovery time, which is 10, 20 minutes.
Sure. And someone drives you, obviously.
Yep. Husband drove me.
There, let's see, peacefully disconnected. What years were you at the Int Pace? I knew Roanne well. She's my age and a lovely person. I wonder if we cross paths. So what years would that have been?
87, probably.
Well, 80. Oh yeah. Well, 87. I would have been turning 17. So you would have been 15. Because you were there for like less than a year.
Oh, I was only there for like 3-4 months.
Yeah. And then you got busted.
Then I got busted. Because I admitted what I did.
That would be cool. So yeah, 87. And then she was at the Pacific Base, which is where I was as well in the late 80s, on and off mid to late 80s. Before then I finally went to Sea Org.
Yeah, I was in 86 to 91, I think.
Yeah, so peacefully disconnected. Reach out. Let's see if we can't figure it out even further. I love the signature. The bridge to total freedom. I don't know why I do that. It's such a thing. It's because that's how I hear it in my head. Because of, I think, the international events that we used to go to.
On Rand's.
Yeah. Total freedom. That's right. Jeff Pomerantz was the what, not the MC, the narrator of all of the Scientology international events. He is an actor. I'm not sure what he does today. Very much, as far as I know, he's still a Scientologist. But so in the Scientology world, he was considered a celebrity.
Mhm.
And he just had this booming voice. So when you hear these old, maybe he's still doing it, I don't know, but it was always the bridge to total freedom. Oh, it's so funny. I'll probably always say it like that. All right. I love that people who found me at Erin are coming over here. Oh, this is interesting. The Peace Lady. I do ketamine infusions in Canada. Whoa, they are 4 hours long. Girl, you being gypped. You getting ripped off.
Yeah. 4 hours.
4 hours.
Jeez.
The Peace Lady, 4 hours. So I wonder if that's like, you'll have to tell us more about that. Are you under the ketamine the whole time? I kind of feel like you'd need more, right? I mean, if you get the ketamine for 40 minutes, I mean, to have it for 4 hours, that's intense.
That is intense. I can't imagine being under for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because, it can get very emotional.
Mm-hmm. Have you experienced that?
The second session, I got very emotional.
And then you just like cry or?
Yep, cried. Couldn't breathe out of my nose for anything.
Wow.
And yeah, it was intense.
And is that because of the things that are coming into your mind that you're discussing that's coming up, or was it kind of more of an unexplained release?
No, it was because of the content.
Of course, I'm curious and I want to ask you what it was, but you don't have to share that if you don't want to.
Yeah, not at the moment.
Okay. We will. No comment on that one. Peacefully Disconnected says, we just missed each other. Maybe we'll meet up in this new life. I hope so. You can find, you can connect with Lana. You can find her on Facebook, and I'm easy to find as well. If you find me, I can connect you with Lana too. So this person, the infusion is 3 hours with recovery time. I get 150 milligrams.
I don't know how many milligrams I get. All they say is they do increase it as you go along. The doctor kind of determines whether you can handle more or not.
Yeah.
And I think after my 5th session, I was like 0.75. So I think that's 0.75 milligrams.
So if this person got 150 milligrams, that's twice as much. But it makes sense though, because it's almost 3 times as long.
And in Canada, it could be completely different.
Yeah.
How they do it.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And you're right. Probably in Canada, it's done a bit differently. I wonder if there are benefits to doing it for longer periods of time like that. I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how it contributes to the rewiring of the brain. Just the infusion itself, the medicine.
Yeah.
Did they explain that to you at all?
Not really, just that it opens up new pathways in your brain that were shut down before.
Shut down because of the trauma.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the pathways are there. They just become kind of blocked or shut down because of what happened. And then through doing the therapy, whether it's ketamine therapy or other types of things that open pathways, it reopens it up. And I guess then we have access again to be able to use those things. That's really interesting because with my, with struggling when I was having a hard time walking and with my neurological issues with everything, balance, brain fog, and the muscle spasms that I was getting, the further I went in, it's like the better I felt about my past and the more I worked through that, the physically better I got.
I believe it.
Yeah. So it's totally such a thing. And I'm so thankful that modern day medicine is kind of catching up to that. And I'm just dying to dive into Jamie Mustard's book about this as well. And I know when I was watching the video, they did mention ketamine infusions as a potential solution too. Nico the cat, I just tuned in, so you may have spoken about this, but I have done at-home ketamine treatment via sublingual tablets. Whoa, where, if you could say, Nico the cat, where do you live? Are you in Canada, or are you in the United States, or another country? Because it is really interesting to find out that that it's being done, but it's being done in different ways in different places. The Peace Lady says she does her infusions for 3 hours, and whoa, she does it for chronic pain. Wow. Which kind of makes sense again, because if your chronic pain is being caused by, a rewiring of your brain, I'll tell you what fascinates me about all of this the most is because I remember when, a year ago when I went to the University of Minnesota to try and sort out these horrific full body muscle spasms that I was having. And they talked about doing cognitive behavioral therapy, and I did a deep dive into that. And when they told me, it's like, it's about how it's necessary to process your trauma, and going back and feeling your feelings. And of course, immediately I was like, no. I don't do feelings. I don't do feelings. I don't do that. I'm not going to experience that. I lived it. And now I recognize how important it is. And to Lana's great relief, because this bitch has been telling me for years. For years, she's like, you have anxiety, right? I'm like, I don't have anxiety. What was that like being, I was still in Scientology, Mom was still in Scientology, and you weren't. You were, not only were you out, you were already exposed to the truths about L. Ron Hubbard and the Sea Organization. Because when you're experiencing and you're having these negative experiences in Scientology or the Sea Organization, one of their tactics is to convince you that it's because of you. You are creating this situation. They're doing nothing wrong. It's not the people around you. It's completely you. And of course, that leads to nothing but just becoming more stuck and feeling stuck. What was that like to watch your family still la 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 la, in Scientology, doing all their steps on the bridge to total freedom? Right. What was that like?
Well, I've always been a little to each his own, Yeah. I got tired of fighting the church about my disagreements, and I was just like, at the end of the day, I want Leilani, my daughter, to be able to be with her cousins, her grandma, and her aunts, and everything.
Yeah, who are all in Scientology.
Yeah, and so I was just like, nobody's coming after me. Yeah, nobody's. They told me, if you keep it up, we're going to declare you, and then of course, never see your family again. But
and the irony here, you never got declared.
No, I didn't.
I did.
Yeah.
It was a threat often used to keep her in line. And that's what I think is so kind of crazy about it.
Yeah, it is crazy.
You didn't even get declared, like, that we know of, not even today, which would be so stupid because she'd been out of the church for such a long time.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, this is the first time I'm telling my story publicly.
So. Oh, she might still get her suppressive person declared.
I want one. I want a goldenrod. I want to hang it up in my office.
Oh, they don't give them to you anymore. I don't even know that. I can't remember if I was even shown mine. I was shown what was going to be on it, because when the two Sea Org members came out to meet with me, I don't know if you knew about that. And I went and met them at a hotel by the airport, and they were showing me like all their, like, this is all the things I've done. These are all my crimes, what it was going to lead to. But I can't recall. I maybe one time saw a copy of my declare. I don't know why I would have, but they stopped. Used to be they would give it to you, because that was the whole idea. Warren Hubbard said that if you put the correct label on somebody, that it will put pressure on them, and you're leaving the door open just a little bit for them to come back into Scientology.
Because there's that reentry program.
Exactly, because then you can do these steps that they called A to E. It was like step A, step B, step C, and so on, to get back into the good graces of Scientology. That's so interesting to me though, doing the ketamine treatment at home from tablets. That seems like a kind of a good way to go. Like it'd be easy.
It would be easier, yeah, but I would be a little like, I don't understand that, because they're watching your vitals the whole time. And one of the really important things they're watching is your respiratory rate.
Oh,
You can, it's anesthesia. You can go under, and your breathing can slow down quite a bit. And you can get in trouble in that way. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe it's a lower dose. I don't know. So Shelby says, I asked for my goldenrod in person, and they said they said they'd send it to me, but they never did. Big surprise there. In Scientology, when you are declared a suppressive person, it's put on a piece of goldenrod paper. Legal size. Yeah, goldenrod is a color. I feel like I saw some on letter. It's like they just realized that nobody puts stuff on legal size paper anymore. They're probably too cheap to get bigger paper. Had a bunch of smaller paper. But it's golden. So I learned, goldenrod is the color of it. And that's where they would put you that, Natalie Webster has been declared a suppressive person for yada, yada, yada. And like I said, about the time that I was leaving in that 2010 period, it was pretty commonplace for people to not get a copy. So that's interesting that Shelby asked for hers, and they never went ahead and never sent it.
Do you remember the time I wrote up a fake goldenrod for you?
That's right. Yes, but tell me what happened.
It's a fake SP declare, and I knew how to write them up because I used to do them in the Sea Org.
And wait, you used to write suppressive person declares?
Yeah, when somebody gets comment or whatever, you'd have to be part of the committee and whatever,
Well, tell me about this. I've never heard this.
So I don't know. It was I forget IJC.
Yeah, so IJC is the International Justice Chief. That is the person who has to sign off on the suppressive person declares, and be the person anybody who has been declared a suppressive person, that person is the only person in Scientology that they can speak to. That wasn't your post though?
No.
Yeah.
It was just that I was on committees.
So you were on a lot of committees of evidence, which is like a court martial.
You have to write up the whole SP declare and
a
certain format and everything. Everybody's, is formatted the same. So you just change the names and the crimes.
Wow. I wonder how many suppressive person declares you wrote.
A lot of people I didn't know.
Oh.
And before I routed out of the Sea Org, they were on this big fitness boarding push.
And that's when you get a fitness board, it's to see if you are fit or not for the Sea Org, and it's used to kick people out of the Sea Org.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, sometimes people are kicked out of the Sea Org.
Yeah, they actually are.
Yeah. What do you recall what people would get kicked out for?
Bad hygiene.
What? Oh. Like how bad does your hygiene have to be?
Not taking a shower, you're not cleaning, you got stuff all over your shirt.
This is crazy. It's like you get kicked out of the Sea organization, not necessarily for something as egregious as, we've heard multiple stories of SA, even with kids. That's not going to get you kicked out of the Sea organization. But you better not be not showering.
Yeah, I know. About hygiene, just kind of your overall health and well-being. Not that they ever cared about that, but if you looked,
how it looks.
Yeah.
The only reason they care about someone in the Sea Orgs, about their personal hygiene, is because of how it makes the Sea organization look. That is something that I think we learned at an early age. It's all about our actions cannot make the church look bad in any way. I fully shared, as you know, the whole story about Mark David Chapman and how we would color pictures and sell them to him. And he did end up going into the Church of Scientology in Hawaii prior to murdering John Lennon. And it just blows my mind how that, whether you're in a smaller organization like that in Hawaii or you're in the sea organization, this lack of like importance, everything is equal to everything. Everything is the world is ending, it's just as bad. If your job's to wash dishes and you don't wash your dishes, Scientology might end. Kelly C, hey ladies, stop me if this is too morbid. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on death now versus when you were in Culty Town? Dropping the body sounds cold and robotic. That is a really good question. I'll let Lana share her answer. For me, what are my thoughts on death? On death for me, I'm not, you got to understand though, I have been in multiple situations where I could have died. From the mall shooting to, I was even when I was in the Sea organization, I was at a Wendy's outside and somebody pulled a gun and people ran. I was with, you might have been dating it at the time, Rick.
Oh, Rick Facto.
Rick Facto. I think it was Rick Facto. Anybody remember Rick Facto? We were sitting outside the Wendy's by the blue buildings and there were these people. Well, first I noticed people running and jumping over bushes and I didn't know why. And I was in the Sea organization there. So I had to have been 17, 18. And I'm sitting at the table with him outside and people are jumping over bushes, running. Somehow I don't see the person with the gun. I don't know how I didn't see the person with the gun. Not at first, maybe because all the commotion, I was too busy looking around. And I didn't get up to run and leave. Like that was not my instinct. First, I was sitting there and my reaction was just looking around and like I was just observing it, which really feels so robotic, but typical, I think, child of Scientology. You become so desensitized to these extreme situations that when it's happening, it doesn't feel weird.
It doesn't feel real.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't feel real and it doesn't feel weird. It's not like it's something that's really bad. And I'm sitting there and Rick was facing me and I just told him, okay, don't turn around. And then I could see two guys. One had a really big gun and he was pointing it at the guy sitting down. And I couldn't quite make out what they were saying, but I did know that in that moment, if we got up and ran, we would draw the attention of this guy. So I thought it was best to just sit there and continue to eat my French fries. And that's what we did. We were the only two people at this table in the middle of a Wendy's outdoor while this intense moment's going on with these there was one guy who was sitting down and then another one had a gun and there was another guy. They ended up jumping in a car and leaving. And I think part of why I didn't freak out is because I could tell this was a situation between them. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody else. Which even the fact that I was thinking like just goes to show like how you just rationalize insanity as, oh, it's fine. I mean, yeah, there's a gun there and this guy might shoot that guy, but I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to keep eating my French fries. Right. That is exactly what I think happens when you've been so desensitized to this idea of trauma.
For sure. Because the way we were, in Scientology, your training to be cause over life. And, why would that, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like almost a, not a God complex, but, you just don't entertain the idea that you could have gotten shot.
Yeah.
You're just there, you're keeping your TRs in.
Ooh, that's triggering.
You're in the moment. And thank goodness he didn't shoot you guys.
Yeah. And I do believe that he had his beef with the other guy. But back to your question, there's been multiple times, I mean, we'll share about the Hawaii missile crisis. I don't know if we're probably not gonna have time to share that today, but when we get together again, we will. Do not let me forget. Our whole family was together during the Hawaii missile crisis. And for 38 minutes, we all thought we were going to die. And we'll share that story at length. And that just happened just a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting in the way that I think different members of our family responded to that in ways, and myself included. So it's not something that I fear, but I do not feel that, dropping they're just going to drop their body. I don't agree that because somebody is sick, I understand like if they're terminal and they're in a lot of pain, if they're ready to go, and if they're no longer in pain, that brings me peace. But they're still gone. They still died. Somebody still died. So I no longer agree with it. It just makes it okay that they're, whether you believe they go into a better place. And I know it's similar to, Christianity, and you go to heaven, you're in a better place. That brings peace. And I think things that bring peace for people in those moments of, trauma, when something's really hard is a good thing. But I definitely don't feel that way anymore. But I know exactly what you're talking about, Kelly, because that coldness, that, oh, they just dropped their body and they're just going to get another one. That is 100% what the attitude was. It is. What did you say?
Yep. Yeah. Very cold. It is cold.
Yeah.
Because you're expected to just be like, okay.
Yeah.
And then you don't grieve.
No.
You don't go through all your mourning process,
There's no time to grieve. There's no opportunity.
And if you are sad, and if you do want to talk about it, even our own family members, would have been like, you know what, it's over, he's got another body or whatever, and get over
it. Exactly. That's just not something that you're really allowed to process. Any emotions that takes your attention off of your production in the Sea organization, or your movement on the bridge to total freedom in Scientology, anything that does that is considered counter to the intention of the group and the individual. And that's kind of when you get in trouble. And then when you're raised understanding that you're pretty much just a distraction, that you need to have, I don't know about you, but I always felt like it was this understanding that L. Ron Hubbard says, we rather have you dead than incapable. It's at the beginning of every major course in Scientology. Over and over and over again. We rather have you dead than incapable. So imagine as a child, it's like, oh, well, if I can't get my act together, I'm better off dead than not being capable of doing these things. Personally, I think that has a lot to do with I don't know if anyone's ever ran the numbers in Scientology of how many, people cause self-harm, but I feel like it's more than your average religion, especially given the smaller numbers in Scientology and the ways in which people have unalived themselves are extreme. We won't get too much into that now, but if you do a little in the Google machine, it's like, it's crazy. It's heartbreaking, but it's just so, some of them are just so extreme.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Let me see what my old lady glasses here. If we got any other questions here. Let's see. Dragonfly says, oh, you've not looked into the treatment in South Africa, so just interested as to which healthcare professional administrator treatment. Oh, who does it in your country? Yes, I'm so interested in that now. Because it's done in so many different places. Oh, Sue, you're just joining the live, starting from the beginning, waiting for the parent car line, right? Isn't that the way? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore.
What's a parent car?
Oh, when you got to go get your kids from school and you have to stay in the line, and if your kids don't catch the bus, that is just the worst. Maybe somebody have it. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe some people like it. At least you get to get caught up on podcasts in that time. That's true. Nico the cat, I wonder if governments have ever utilized Scientology practices on soldiers, since it sounds like the practice creates cold, mission-focused personalities over time. Girl.
I'm sure they tried, but L. Ron Hubbard wasn't really into the military because he got dishonorably discharged or something.
Yeah.
And so I remember that they didn't like the military, and they go into prisons and stuff, but not military.
Yeah, they're
government.
I think it's very much a how do you describe it? You're spot on in what you said. I would say more the Sea organization than Scientology as a whole. I think when you meet different people, I think it's most extreme in people who grew up in Scientology. That combination of Nancy says fake Navy, you're totally right. We were totally in the fake Navy. We wore the little uniforms.
Yeah. When we watch movies now, it's like port, starboard.
Yeah.
Repeat your orders.
I could see in some ways, depending on what you were trying to do in the military, that some of those tactics they're similar in ways. They're similar. I worked with someone who, she was in the military, and we have traded stories about our mentality and our discipline and our work ethic. And it really stems from that militaristic training that she got. She was in the Air Force. And I would share with her some of in the SEAL organization what I went through. It's there, there are things that it's like, like, okay, it helped with my work ethic, but there are other ways to do that. But growing up, you really have this feeling that if I can't produce, if I can't pull my weight, then I lack value.
Right.
There was no just being to be.
Yeah, there was no being a kid.
No. Sure. I think that's why I like to be a kid now. If I can, I like playing with my grandkids. I still like making snowmen in the snow here in Minnesota. We get to do that, even though I've not done it much, but I'm fortunate to work with people who like to play, and we'll do fun things. And it's just fun. I find myself wanting to do some of the things that we didn't get to do as kids. Even I have had urges to play with certain toys. But I don't think that's too uncommon. You guys tell me, do you go into Target and be like, oh, I'm totally going to buy myself that Cabbage Patch doll? I think it's also not common if you didn't have it growing up. That's why I think this is my theory on why so many guys are into these older cars and whatnot. And my partner, Tony, is super into the old cars because growing up, that's what they idolized and what they saw, and they still want it when they get older. That's a theory that I have. I don't know if there's any truth in that whatsoever. Sassy Sister, Nico, I think the military has a lot of cult-like culture. You are completely right. And I think that's probably a better way of putting it. They do have, from what I've seen, a lot of cult-like culture. I've had friends who've gone into the military, specifically the Marines, and didn't come out the same. And I think it's a different experience for different people. And then at the same time, I've seen people go into the military who just come out and they're amazing. Like they find their calling and this purpose to serve, and they truly are happy. So it's interesting to kind of see how that happens. Why is this clicking funny? I'm on the West Coast and stay up late. You're a stay up late person. So I missed your first hour. I'll watch after your live is over. I'm so glad your sis is talking out now. Yes, it's very exciting. What is it? Because, I've been out for almost 13 years, and I spoke out when I first left, and I've been more vocal and in part by nature of what I've done for a living. How is this feeling to you? You've this is your fourth time we sat down, first time doing a live.
Yeah. Scary. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Is it just kind of the newness of because there's people, or is it the subject matter itself?
I think that well, one, there's people watching, and two, like I said earlier, when I was doing my ketamine session and I was looking into my self-worth.
Yeah.
I just don't feel I just didn't feel like anybody cared. Like why would anybody care about my story or my life story? And it's just not worth talking about.
That's so crazy, because that's exactly what I thought. And when I first left Scientology, I participated in the Tampa Bay story about coerced abortion, and that had more to do with my child. It was more of a mama bear reaction because they were trying to take her away from me for the third time. and that's when they were trying to get Shelby to move out when she first came back from Florida. And we had to send her to Mexico and all that. And she did end up, obviously then getting out. But those times where it's like that transition in how your thinking changes, part of why I like doing the podcast and I'm enjoying doing these lives and like being on Aaron's show is because the more that we're able to talk about it, I feel like we have more perspective now, not just all these years later, but I'd like to think we got a little smarter. We got a little wiser. We got to have some experiences in the real world and interact with people not in Scientology. CK says, "You're doing great, Lana. We're all happy to hear what you both have to share." Thank you so much. And then when I was going to start doing, the Tonka Talk podcast, the Tonka Talk podcast is not about Scientology. It's about the way people create community and connection. But on Fridays, Lana and I started sharing our own story of growing up in Scientology because that has everything to do with why I am so obsessed with community and connection and the way that people find that and create that, because it's something that I didn't really think existed. And definitely I wasn't experiencing that in Scientology. So when you're able to go back and look at these things, I think, and share it through the eyes you have today, especially post therapy and now having done the ketamine therapy, is it different for you to look at it now?
I wouldn't say I don't have any different viewpoints or anything. It's just more like, how does what happened to me affect me now? And I'll have to say, after my ketamine treatments, it's one of them, my breakthrough was Scientology doesn't matter. And they have no right to tell me, dictate to me, or make me feel anxiety, depression, PTSD. And they have no power over me anymore.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of cliche, but it really freed me from even thinking about Scientology and the Sea Org so often.
Yeah, exactly. And we've talked about it, and some of you have been wonderful enough to share some of your experiences too in the comments. And there's so much shame attached to it. When you're going through it, it's this, sometimes you don't even see it as trauma because that's all you've known. That's your normal. And, you start leaving Scientology, leaving the Sea organization, leaving that whole culture and meeting people on the outside. And it's not that we met people not in Scientology. We knew people not in Scientology. I lived in a regular neighborhood when I was a parishioner after I had left the Sea organization. But you don't really establish close relationships too much. And when I started to do that, because honestly, you don't have the time. All your time is spent either volunteering at Scientology or doing courses or Scientology auditing / counseling. That's where you're spending all your time. So you don't have time to do that. And when I started doing that and being able to have real relationships and do things, see the ways that people were helping people, that was amazing. Soon I want to do a live, maybe I'll even do it later today or tomorrow. I want to talk about my experience in the pageant.
Oh, yeah.
I was Mrs. Excelsior, which was a city I lived in at the time, and I was competing to become Mrs. Minnesota. And I was still in Scientology at that time, though I was definitely of the, I don't know how much longer I want to do this, but it was that experience that opened my eyes a lot more to how many great people are out there, how many organizations and people are doing things to help each other. Remember the 35W bridge collapse?
Yep.
So in Minneapolis, we had a major freeway bridge collapse. It was an absolute disaster. And it was the 35W bridge. It's since been rebuilt. This was years. Well, I was still in Scientology. I could be wrong, but I want to say it was around 2007.
I'm not even sure.
2007, 2008. Because I remember it was around the time of the pageant, and the pageant was March 2008. And I volunteered. At first, I was volunteering as Mrs. Excelsior. I was there with the Excelsior Fire Department, but I was also there as a volunteer minister from Scientology, which was kind of cringe, to be honest. And the number of people who were like really getting things done. Anytime you go to a Scientology event, right? It was always how the volunteer ministers are the only ones doing this and the only one getting it done. And Scientology is the only thing that can help people. And here I am looking around going, look at all these people. Look at all these people helping. Look at all these people donating. Look at all these people showing up, dropping what they're doing to come help other people. People that they didn't even know. That was real community.
Yeah.
It's just so I still think it's the most beautiful thing ever. Does that say Steffi? It's so fascinating how I can relate to the Church of Scientology coming out of abusive relationships. Yes. Love to hear about this story. It helps the heal process. I hear you. And you're right. I always like to say everybody's got their own cult, whether it was a controlling relationship, whatever that situation is that, held you by the balls. I don't know how else to say that. Stronghold. Yes, it had a stronghold on you. And you were saying in going through the ketamine infusion therapy, that really changed how you see yourself and your value.
Right.
Which is so interesting because ketamine infusion therapy is about rewiring and opening pathways in the brain. It wasn't more intense therapy necessarily, although I've heard too that people can do therapy during ketamine. You had your husband there and you were talking through a lot of these things. It's that mechanical opening up of those pathways too. Yeah. That's why I'm so curious as to how, in looking back at these things, like you were saying, it doesn't really change how you see it, but being able to look back at it without having all in today's time, in present time, have those negative feelings and effects as strongly.
Right. If you have abandonment, type of stuff, you can, I lost my train of thought.
If you have abandonment issues and things that can kind of help with that too, you're saying.
Yeah, it helped me a ton. And you're just able to, things like my husband and I say to each other, you had every right as a child to want to feel loved and protected, and safe.
Yeah.
And, all this stuff. And you had every right. So it really acknowledges your feelings of, man, nobody cared about me, and so you for me anyway, I can overcome those feelings, those negative feelings.
Yeah. I mean, just look at, I'm gonna take Lana later through all the comments so she can see many of these. Here's one question. Do you both know that you're important? Your voices are helping lots of us. We hear you never forget that. I am a never in, but it does not mean my life was pure butter. Thank you for saying that. And you're completely right. And that helps us because it's too easy sometimes, I think, you can't just blame everything on growing up in a cult.
Right.
It's just not necessarily. And again, I can only speak for myself and what I know to be true. It's sometimes I realize, I was sharing the other day, how now that I'm watching these TikTok videos about Gen X, some of my shit is just because of my generation, our generation. And it's although I feel like it was the worst time to be a Scientologist, like that time in life with the way that the world is with there was naturally less parental supervision. But when we're saying no parental supervision, it's next level. It's next level beyond that. But when I started connecting with people who had never been in Scientology and hearing their pain and what their struggles are, I realized that they were similar to mine, yet they were never in Scientology.
Right.
They were never in the Sea Org.
Right. Everybody holds their trauma or their stress in different ways.
Yeah. And it happens out there. So it made me feel more accepted and more of a part of a community to know that, I'm just not this complete weirdo because of, our family history and background and everything that happened, that people who've never been in Scientology go through horrific things as well. And they're just trying to figure it out too. It's just I just love that so many people are willing to share that and talk about it, because in Scientology, you're not allowed to share when you're not doing well.
Right.
So it's a lot of pretending you're doing absolutely fabulous. Lana, Scientologist, doesn't matter. Perfect. What you were saying. It's all just a bunch of made up crap from a wacko crazy narcissist named Lafayette.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. The things in Scientology that resonated with me are natural truths that exist in other places. There are things in it that I found to be true and helpful. They were not things that were founded completely by L. Ron Hubbard. Right. He just wrote about it and didn't allow me to read other books to find out that, hey, guess what? That's all over the place.
Yeah.
I always like to use the analogy of gravity. Gravity just is, whether you believe in it or not. And L. Ron Hubbard did not create that.
Right. I remember going to some college, and you have to take psychology. Well, you don't have to, I guess, but I had to take psychology 101 or something like that. And all throughout the class, I'm like, what? Other people, it's just called something different.
Yeah.
Man, they're so gypped. I could have been doing that for free.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Exactly. That's what you don't realize until after you leave and you're able to have this exposure to all of these different modalities, to all of these different ways of solving problems, and to be able to freely discuss them. Love, Maddie, there are so many lovely, sweet people still in the Church of Scientology. Yeah. It's so sad, though. I'm so happy when I hear more and more are leaving it. Yep, that is definitely the case. It's part of why I know for me that I want to continue to share and share other stories as well, because the more that it gets out, especially with social media, even just a clip of something sometimes is enough. I would say that it layers. And when I was a Scientologist, even a 100% in Scientologist, when I would hear those things or be exposed to it, it would put a crack in the armor, even if I didn't want to mention it. And when you hear it more and more and from different sources, even more so, it makes you start to question. And there's nothing wrong with questioning. You can question anything, any belief. There's no one way. This is what I think, that there's no one way of believing anything or doing anything. There's more than one way. So why not just let them do what they're going to do? Let them do them. I just draw the line on, hey, you shouldn't be hurting other people while you're at it. Dog's rule is right up Lana's alley, because she can't tell you the name of her neighbors, but she can tell you every dog in the neighborhood. Any place where the broken feel safe to gather and heal is a beautiful space. Love and light to all of us. Oh, I love that. And you are so absolutely right. Do you think, Lana, that you would do a live again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're gonna come up. I've got a list of things that I want to run by Lana to see if that she'll be willing to talk about and share. And one of them I want to get into, which maybe I'll start by myself. We'll see, is the whole pageant story. Because Lana was very involved with me in that. She was my pageant coordinator or handler. Yeah. We had so much fun with it. That was fun. We're going to talk more about that. I would love to hear any questions that you have. My live yesterday, I addressed, Love Maddie says she's the same with the dogs. Oh, doesn't know the neighbor's name, but can tell you every dog in the neighborhood. That is totally Lana every day, all day. She used to offer her food when we were kids to animals before she would give it to me. It was all about the animals. But we want to continue to do this and, like I said, share this. But I would really love your feedback, your thoughts, and what you want to hear, because we've got a million stories, a million examples. We want to hear yours as well, but kind of like, what are your questions? It kind of helps us with a place to start. So please do share those in the comments. Really appreciate you joining us. Would love if you would share this channel, subscribe to the channel and help us get the word out. Jilly, you guys are great together. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to Shelby's going to come on.
Yeah.
My oldest Shelby. And we'll talk to our sister Nahi and see. Well, she's in Hawaii, but I could get her online. But truly, I keep saying this, but I truly appreciate every single one of you that takes the time to make a comment and reach out, that takes the time to share your own story. Even though sometimes it can be so heartbreaking hearing what other people are going through, it really helps us realize that, hey, we are all just these broken pieces and we're trying to find our place. And I love that we can do that together. Another thing I want to share is we have done some really fun stuff too. We have fun. There's a lot that we have done in our time since we've left Scientology. And we're going to share that, and we're going to talk about that too, because the name of this channel is Scientology Life After a Cult. And there's so much that we talk about during, but I really want to cover that too and talk a lot about afterwards. Thank you, Sassy Sister. Pause for Andrea. Aloha and Melikalikimaka. Thank you. Mahalo. I love that. I used to make the password in my house when Tony's kids lived with us full time. Still, I would make it a Hawaiian word. So they'd have to, I made it my middle name. So they'd have to learn how to spell it.
If you can't spell it, you can't get on.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't learn this word, then you not get on the Wi-Fi. So again, thank you so much. Love to you all. Aloha.
Aloha.
We will talk to you later.